Hello and welcome to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra at d1baseball.com. I'm Joe Healy, taking you through a preview of the College World Series. We will take a look at the entire field here on Friday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, but an emphasis on tonight's marquee matchup between Tennessee and Florida State. Obviously, tomorrow's show will have a little more game preview stuff because we've got three SEC teams starting play on Saturday, just one, Tennessee, here on Friday. So let's jump right into it. Right. First of all, I'm sitting live in Omaha. This is what a hotel room in Omaha looks like, or at least where I'm staying. Later in the week, I will be on the morning preview shows with the rest of the D1 gang: Mike Rooney, Kendall Rogers, Aaron Fitt, and you will see the same this artwork in the background of all of our shots. So look forward to that. So yeah, two games today. The first in all ACC matchup, North Carolina, Virginia. I mean, obviously not an SEC game there, but should be a good one. Two very good offenses, two pitching staffs. Both have talent, just different. So, again, not an SEC game, but should be a good one. So looking forward to that as well. My overall thoughts on the field, though, I mean, if you listen to Highway to Hoover, our crossover episode with ACC baseball, et cetera, we talked about it. But I like this field because I think it's one where everybody's got a chance to win. There's really not a team here that some are more favored than others, but there's really not a team here that I think can't win this thing. And that's pretty unique. There's usually at least one team every year, like all due respect to Oral Roberts last year, that was a team that I would have been shocked if they had won, right? This year, though, there's no shocks here. All 8 of these teams, could get this done. All 8 have pedigree to some degree, right? Especially 7 of the 8. 7 of the 8 teams here have been to Omaha as recently as 2018. And that's North Carolina is the longest drought of those 7. And then the 8th is Kentucky, which, it's the number 2 team in the country. So Kentucky winning it all shouldn't be a shock at this stage of the game, right? So I like that element. I also think it's interesting that, you've got 3 ACC teams in one side of the bracket and 3 SEC on the other side of the bracket. And yet I'm intrigued by, in my official picks, I actually went Tennessee on one side, which is the side of the bracket where they're the only SEC team. And I actually like NC State on the other side of the bracket, and they're the one ACC team on that side of the bracket. So kind of funny how that worked out. But so it just should be a fun couple of weeks. A lot of good offensive baseball, a lot of good lineups here. There's pitching talent, but as we've seen in college baseball this year, how much of that can overcome just what's been a very offensive game. But this ballpark is a little bit of an equalizer, right? You can hit the ball out of here now. This is not the way it was 10 years ago when, there'd be a handful of home runs the entire week. This is not that. However, it's different than that Clemson last weekend, right? Where Florida felt like every single hitter in the lineup was on the verge of hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Like this is not that. So it's always interesting to see how that ends up playing out in the end. Tonight's big game, Tennessee and Florida State. That is the marquee game of the day. Gives us kind of the juiciest matchup. You've got Tennessee's lineup, which I think is the best in the country. There are others that maybe disagree there, but that's kind of what I've stood by all year, against Jamie Arnold, who is the best pitcher here in terms of, really just look at the all-around game. I mean, there are other good pitchers here, don't get me wrong, but in terms of what he's produced and his, he's a real prospect. It's real stuff. He's been their guy this year. That's a fun matchup there. The one X factor I would throw into the mix here is that apparently he injured his thumb in the celebration at the Super Regional and has like a cut or something like that. He's still going to go. Does it affect him? We won't know until it happens. And then even then, is it just that he didn't pitch well, or was it bothering him? We shall see. But if he's in top form, that's a tough matchup for Tennessee. I still like Tennessee's ability to do some things, obviously. But this is if Jamie Arnold's on his game, this is not going to be a situation where Tennessee can come in there expecting to score 3 runs and win or if they're not able to hold. Let me put it this way: if they're not able to hold Florida State to 0 or 1 runs, like this is not a situation where you're thinking, well, that's okay because, we can just win in a slugfest. Like this is probably not going to be that kind of game. And then from the Tennessee standpoint, what do they get out of Chris Stamos? Tennessee going to Chris Stamos to start it off there. This is kind of Tennessee's MO. Like it would have been easy to flip to say, hey, let's put Drew Beam on the mound and put our guy who gives us the most depth and consistency, and he's been in Omaha before, et cetera, et cetera. Let's throw him out there. That would have been an easy decision to make, but historically, Tennessee likes in Omaha to continue to use the rotation that got him here. I think about last year when, they had Dolander, or if they had wanted to start Burns or Beam, they could have done all that, but they went back to Andrew Lindsay because Andrew Lindsay had been pitching on Fridays for them. So again, they're just going to stick with what got him here. So Chris Stamos is going to get the start. We know how that typically goes. You get a couple innings out of him, a couple 3 innings maybe out of him, and then you turn it to AJ Causey. And I think it's going to be really important that Tennessee get something out of Stamos. Tennessee is going to be in for a real fight if it's one of those situations where Stamos is out in the first inning, because Florida State's lineup is too talented. That runs might be a premium on the other end. So it's one where you're looking to get him at least into the third inning, perhaps finish with the third inning, so that then you can bring in Causey and you can think, well, if Causey's on his game here, and more often than not this season he has been, if he's on his game here, he could finish this and we could win the game. That's the ideal for Tennessee. Florida State obviously is going to have other ideas, and we'll see who ends up winning that battle. Flip over here to the okay, yeah. Thought there was a comment, but social media strikes again. It's just one of those spammy things. One of the other questions that I have about this College World Series from an SEC standpoint, and really just generally, is the last few years we have had an obvious answer to the question of whose fan base do you think will turn up the most, right? Last year it was LSU. The year before it was Ole Miss. The year before that it was Mississippi State. And I think there are a number of good answers here. I think, Tennessee's one, right? Obviously. And I think we'll learn something about that tonight. Now Fridays can be kind of tricky because it's, can people, take that time off to get here versus the actual weekend days, right? So maybe the Sunday crowd will actually be better than Friday, but we'll see. I think we'll get a little bit of a hint at how well the Tennessee folks are going to turn out. I think there's a chance we see a really good turnout for Kentucky too, just because they're the team that's not been here. And, they were going over 7,000 at the Super Regionals, which is numbers they just don't normally hit, right? So does that continue? Do they really has this program gotten to a point where their fans are so bought in that you start to get some people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have, aren't that bought in on baseball, but hey, it's Omaha and this is the first time our team's been here. Let's make a thing of it. Does that end up coming into play? And Kentucky ends up being the team to show out here. Obviously, Texas A&M, a very, very, a very well thought of fan base. So I don't know. I've been asked quite a bit about that. I'm not really sure exactly where that would go. So that'll be a little bit of a subplot to follow. And of course, the Jello Shot Challenge. I think that those things go part and parcel, right? To win the Jello Shot Challenge, your team has to be here a long time. Also, you need to be a team that is bringing a lot of people into town. And yes, there's a thing now where you could call in, and purchase some Jello shots we've seen how that's gone in the past, with people kind of coming in and buying them in bulk at one time. So that's a factor, but mostly it's about how many people do you bring into town. And so that'll be an interesting thing to follow this week as well. Lots of stuff on the site to follow here. First of all, if you missed it, we did a lot of stuff at Media Day yesterday. There's a media day. I think it says D1 Baseball at Media Day or something like that on the site. We interviewed all 8 head coaches, several players from every team. Steven Schock's got his videos up on there as well, his social media content, a lot of stuff there. So if you want to catch up on what we did on Media Day, there is that available as well. I just got back from recording a live podcast. So that will be in your podcast feed soon, I presume, also in video form. So that is there as well. Obviously, we'll be at the games today. We'll have something written on both games, perhaps multiple things on both games. Also good photography. We've got some multiple photographers here. So we end up having a lot more photojournalism going on here in addition to the written stuff. So there's that to look forward to. And of course, odds and ends along the way. I'm still updating transfer portal trackers. I keep a running thing going of transfer commits, outgoing SEC players. A couple teams again, we'll have time to talk about the portal at a later point, but programs like Georgia and Kentucky that really go in on the portal are at it again. Like those are two programs that are really pulling them in. LSU, a number of good gets already. So the transfer portal has been very active. So we'll continue to update that while I'm here. There'll be posts on that. So just keep it locked to d1baseball.com. All of our social media channels. We'll have all kinds of stuff from here in Omaha. Okay. Nicholas Doherty on YouTube. How do you think Florida uses Healy this week with the off day between games? I honestly think it's, in a perfect world, they pitch him every game. Now, that could obviously change. Let's say Liam Peterson turns in a start somewhat similar to what we saw against Clemson. I think Healy's probably the first arm out. And then, if they end up having to use him for, 70 some odd pitches or something, maybe it means he doesn't come back in the next game. But then again, he pitched on back-to-back days in Clemson, and the second time around wasn't as good, but it was still pretty good. So I think the idea in a perfect world is to use him every game and just maximize how many times you can go to him. The off day certainly helps that. And if you can keep his pitch count into a reasonable number, you would expect he would be sharp, going out there every other day. So as long as, if Florida's able to stay on the winner's side of this thing, I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't use him basically every game. So that's kind of my expectation, because if you're Florida, you don't want to lose having not been able to play that card at some point. Carl Dunn, good morning, Joe. Your opinions on Paul Mainieri's return to the SEC at South Carolina? Surprised, I think, like most folks. I understand the concern, given that he's, he was semi-retired, right? Or we assumed he was retired. College baseball is a very different game. Liz has given us a Jello shot challenge update. I will read that here in just a second. But on Mainieri, he retired in 2021, which is right exactly when college sports in general, but college baseball specifically, really started to change, right? The transfer portal was about to bust wide open. That was the offseason when Tommy White was in the portal, or was that after 2020? That would have to been after 2022. So never mind. But, the transfer portal was about to bust wide open. Things, the NIL was about to become a thing. So it's just a different world even than it was 3 years ago. So I understand the concern from that standpoint, but what I would say is, I think it's good news that Monty Lee's sticking around. I think he's a very good hitting coach. He's a good recruiter. There was support for him to be the head coach there. That would have been interesting, of course, given his Clemson history, but so there are positives here. So that's not just the assistant coaching thing, but I would also say it's less about what Paul Mainieri can or can't do here in 2024 from his standpoint. To me, it's more about, is South Carolina prepared to play in the NIL space in baseball? Is South Carolina prepared to do what it takes to go up against Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M, et cetera, for the biggest names in the transfer portal? Because South Carolina has done plenty of transfers. They've had some examples of guys who have been exceptionally good as transfers. Ty Good, Garrett Gainey, Chris Veach, all three of their best relievers, frankly. But when it comes to the guys like Tommy White, like Braden Montgomery, like Billy Amick, they're not really in the mix. So will they be in the future? And to me, that the answers to those questions actually have a lot more to do with South Carolina's near future than how ready Paul Mainieri is to be a head coach again. Because I think that's just in college baseball, those things are just as important, if not more so important. So I actually am fairly positive it's going to be fine. Now, do I think it's going to be this transformational hire that gets South Carolina to a new level? I don't know about that, right? But who knows? If they support him, in terms of the resources, then I don't think there's really any reason they couldn't. But just as is, I don't think Paul Mainieri is going to crater the program. I also don't think it's necessarily a transformational hire that's going to change something for the positive. I'd love to be wrong, though. Paul Mainieri is a fun guy to have in the league. I think, he's a positive guy, very well-liked guy. So I do think there are some positives here. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, Liz's update on the Jello shot challenge. Tennessee is currently leading with 348. the conference count, which I think is a cool thing to do. SEC has 869, ACC 753. So close in the conference count there. Tennessee leading. Shout out to the great Angela Rogers. She throws in a great job, Joe. Thank you, Angela. Nice to see you. William Cantrell on YouTube. I think Tennessee versus Florida State is going to be low scoring, 4-3 or 5-4. That feels about right, William. Because that feels about right. That feels like a situation where those teams get into a couple balls, hit a couple balls out, but the pitchers limit the damage, right? So yeah, I think I'm with you there, William. Carl Dunn mentions about Maneri. He's bringing Terry Rooney as his pitching coach and Hendry from Virginia. We'll see. I know there's less optimism about those hires than there is keeping Monty Lee, but we'll see. Ron Burgundy on X. Who do you like in the UNC or UVA game? This is an SEC focused show, but I'll allow it. I just did the live show. I picked UVA today. I like Evan Blanco as a pitcher in this ballpark. It's a lot of strikes. The ballpark's going to help him hold the ball in. So I like that. And then also, Jason DeCaro is on the mound for UNC and how as a freshman, and look, a freshman who's had a lot of success, how does he deal with the moment? It's a big deal for a freshman to come and pitch in this. So Virginia's veteran lineup against a freshman there for North Carolina, I kind of like that from Virginia's standpoint, and I like Evan Blanco on the mound. Now, I also did say this morning on the show that it wouldn't surprise me if Virginia gets this game and then UNC goes further in this tournament, because UNC's bullpen is really good. I think that's a huge advantage over most every other team in this field, and they are a team that's built on the pitching staff to be able to come back through the losers bracket. Now, is it ideal? No. It's easier if they win this game, but I think they do have the bullpen pieces, North Carolina, to be able to lose today and still come back through and make a run. Aaron Simmerly, how shocked will you be if Florida does come out of their side of the bracket? They have a tough assignment game one, win that, and 3-0 to the championship game feels possible. Yeah, I won't be shocked. I mean, based on what we've seen out of Florida the last 2 weeks, I mean, I don't think I'd have any right to be shocked, right? If Liam Peterson comes out and is less like the pitcher we saw against Clemson and is more like the guy we saw the month or 6 weeks prior to that, then that's great. You have Cags the plate. I mean, that guy's basically just a walking home run. So in a bare minimum, he's gonna get walks. You're gonna have runners on base. The lineup felt complete last weekend. It felt like they were getting something from everybody. I think that's big for that lineup. Again, different types of ballparks, right? So that's a factor. But so no, I don't think anybody should be shocked if Florida pulls this off. Like the talent has always been there. It took them a while, but here they are. Liz also mentions tomorrow's game should be interesting. 20-mile-an-hour winds to the north. Today a little less. She mentions 6 to 8 miles an hour wind. 6 to 8 mile an hour winds throughout the day into the evening, but then 20 mile an hour tomorrow is obviously a much different deal. So that will be interesting. I agree. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints. Bigger show tomorrow. Obviously, we've got 3 SEC games on tap tomorrow, in addition to recapping what happens with Tennessee and Florida State tonight. So I'll be there tomorrow morning recapping that, looking ahead to the next day. Should be a lot of fun. For those who are here in Omaha and you're watching this, welcome to Omaha. Hope you have a good time. Same rules apply. It's harder to spot me out in the wild because there's 20 some odd thousand people here and many more than that, just kind of hanging out around the ballpark. But if you do see me, say hi. I'm more likely to be wearing D1 baseball gear here than during the regular season. So maybe I'm a little easier to spot, but so if you see me out, say hi. I'll be here for the duration of the event. But I hope you'll be watching Weekend Waypoints. We're going to 2 more weekends this weekend doing Weekend Waypoints, next weekend Weekend Waypoints, but that'll be it for the season, obviously. So we'll pick it back up next February. All right, that's going to do it for this edition. I will talk to you guys tomorrow morning. Enjoy the baseball today, everyone. See you soon.